Good morning and welcome, everyone. How are you today? If you can hear me, please indicate in the chat. Introduce yourself, say hello, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tomiwa Aladekomo. I am the CEO of TechCabal, and I'm happy to have you all join us for this episode of TechCabal Live, which we are producing in partnership with The Rundown. We have a great conversation today with Zain Verjee and Professor Bitange Ndemo, and I'm looking forward to a fascinating conversation on building for an AI future in Africa. I'll do some introductions and a bit of background, and then we'll jump into the conversation. As I said, I'm the CEO of Cabal Media, which is the parent company of TechCabal. TechCabal has been covering the business and the impact of technology and innovation in Africa for the last 11 years. We publish high-quality articles, reports, and we do events like this, as well as physical events like our conference Moonshot, which will happen in October. We also publish the TC Daily Newsletter, which is a comprehensive roundup of tech news and events across Africa. If you're not subscribed to it, there's a link in chat, and you should definitely subscribe to it today because it is an amazing and valuable resource for understanding what's happening in tech in Africa and why it matters. This event is organized by TechCabal Insights in partnership with The Rundown. TechCabal Insights is TechCabal's events research and data analytics arm. We're an Africa-focused digital economy consultancy. We leverage big data to help startups, investors, operators, big tech companies, governments, other ecosystem players to understand what's happening in Africa's digital economy. If you are interested in sort of African prosperity and think the digital economy is the way that's going to happen, you should definitely connect with the TC Insights team. We'll drop the link in chat, but it's insights.techcabal.com, and you can find our reports and sort of engage with the team. I'd mentioned that this edition today of TC Live is in partnership with The Rundown. The Rundown is a modern media academy, which is combining the precision of algorithms with the creativity of humans. We're in an AI age. As the media landscape is evolving at a sort of really, really fast pace, it's key that people in the comms industry move fast, adopt, an ethical storytelling framework for the modern age, learn to use AI. There are opportunities, there are challenges with AI, particularly in Africa. And so the Rundown is building sort of a world-class comms training academy, teaching people how to do really great storytelling in a world that's driven by AI, virtual reality, blockchain, sort of a range of other sort of immensely fast-moving technologies. And so, again, we'll drop the link in chat for you to engage with the Rundown, but definitely an important one. Today, we are joined by Zain Verjee. Hi, Zain.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Tomiwa.
Excellent. It's great to have you
Thanks
here.
everyone for joining us. You know what time it is here?
What time is it and where? Where are you?
It's about 3 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles. So I really care about this topic, and it's great to be with you guys as well as with Ambassador Ndemo. Thank you so much. So forgive me in case I'm just in wake-up mode.
Okay. I hope there's a coffee somewhere close by you.
There are a couple.
And thank you for joining us. For those who don't know, Zain Verjee is the co-founder of The Rundown, which I just described and I just talked a bit, and she will talk a bit more about. You might previously know her as the executive producer of Unstoppable Africa 2022 and 2023, which was a 2-day gathering on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly with a theme of When Africa Wins, the World Wins. You might also know her as a former CNN anchor, State Department correspondent. She's got immense experience and relationships and understanding of the media world, and I'm glad to have her talking about this topic today. She's become, actually, as she and I discussed, she's become an AI guy. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Zain, the AI guy, because everybody knows Zain, the CNN anchor, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also joined today and really privileged to be joined by Ambassador Bitange Ndemo, who is Kenya's ambassador to the Kingdom of Belgium. Welcome, Ambassador and Professor Ndemo. How are you?
I'm very fine, and I'm happy to join you this morning.
Excellent. Where are you joining us from?
I am in Brussels.
You're in Brussels. What time is it in Brussels?
It is at 12:05.
Excellent. So I'm in Lagos. It's 11 a.m. here. You are in Brussels. Zain is in LA. This is possibly one of our most international TC Live sessions yet. But for those who don't know, Ambassador and Professor Bitange Ndemo is a global technocrat. He currently serves as Kenya's ambassador to the Kingdom of Belgium. Previously, he was a professor of entrepreneurship at the University of Nairobi Business School, School of Business, and he's been an advocate of development strategies leveraging emerging tech and social enterprise in Africa. He sits on the boards of several high-profile organizations, such as East Africa's most profitable company, Safaricom. He's a senior advisor to 3 UN agencies and other non-governmental institutions. He has over 30 years of experience in business, finance, technology. He's worked in government, higher education, in the public-private sector. He's widely published in academic journals, and he's a leading public intellectual. We are more than blessed to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting me, to join my friend Zain at this late hour in California.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into it. Zain, my favorite AI guy, why are you on here talking to us about AI? Like, what sparked your interest in the AI and sort of the AI space, has made you dig deeper on it? Why are you my email every week with a new newsletter on whatever experiments you were running on AI and whatever products you're building? Just let's start there.
Well, thank you. I like toys. I'm looking for a way to retire early, Tomiwa, and I want to do less work. And this seems to be one way to do it. No, I looked at the entire advent of generative AI as something completely revolutionary for the communication space, especially. It's been compared to the impact of the Industrial Revolution. And you have to take notice. It's an all-purpose technology where it's akin to electricity, where applications are far and wide and change the world forever. And so for me, I just looked at what was happening and I thought to myself, I'm either going to be on that or I'm going to be left behind. I'm either going to survive with understanding that, or I'm going to allow my fear and a little bit of confusion and trepidation about generative AI take over. And, as there are many entrepreneurs in this room watching around the world, as an entrepreneur, to be successful, you take risks, you put yourself in uncomfortable places, you try and look at new ideas from all sorts of directions, you flip the script a little bit, see what works, and there are new opportunities out of that. So as a comms person, having been a former journalist, currently doing a lot of work around our corporate communications, PR, media outreach, it was absolutely clear to me that the game is changing here and that we needed to change with it. As it's changing, there are dangers for communications people, for journalists in newsrooms today. Looking at anyone in a leadership position needing to understand the dangers like misinformation, disinformation, the importance of understanding and developing new ethical frameworks and new regulatory environments. So the application and understanding of all of this was really important to me. So I'm able to sit at a table and truly articulate and understand and lead in the spaces that I am in ways that are innovative and interesting. I'll say one more thing, is that I'm a storyteller, and artificial intelligence is totally disrupting my industry, from audio, video, photography, production. And so that storytelling piece was critical for me. But as an African storyteller, it was even more important for me, because the most important person in Africa is the storyteller. And if the storyteller today does not understand generative AI, and if the storyteller today does not understand the importance of its applications, of using data sets to tell our narratives, then we'll be left behind. And I don't want that to happen.
I think it's a really important point, and I think it's a key theme in conversations about AI in Africa, which are, do we solve all our sort of fundamental problems, power, politics, like feeding the continent, etc. And like while we're doing that, do we just kind of, let the rest of the world be getting on with AI and all this stuff that seemed a bit too fancy? But there's a real reality that we get left behind if we're not sort of like on the game with emergent technologies like right from the jump. I guess, that leads into a question. So you've built this thing, the Rundown. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish with the Rundown?
Well, the problems we're trying to solve here are, how do you get individuals to overcome their fears of artificial intelligence and generative AI overall? How do we provide knowledge that is accessible to everyone, particularly in emerging markets and especially on the African continent, that you can trust? And how do you get clarity for the kind of tools that you want to use and that you want to apply in the work that you do, right? So we're building this platform as a way to double down on storytelling, the core values and the core ethics of storytelling, because quite frankly, that doesn't change, right? And we want to acknowledge that human creativity, human empathy, critical thinking is really important in the context of any kind of work that you do with any generative AI tool. So hence that line, the power of algorithms and the creativity of humans. And that's what we're coalescing around. And we're building an edtech platform. We're in the very early stages. We are in product discovery mode. So any feedback from anyone watching here will be very valuable for us. If you take a look at the rundown.studio, just see what we're up to. And we have an ecosystem of really interesting instructors and individuals and talent who will be able to teach bites on the go, tips, courses, bespoke training for journalists, for communications teams, for PR experts, and all comms specialists. So that's what we're looking to do, Tomiwa. And one of the big areas we want to focus on, obviously, is going to be mis and disinformation and deep fakes. And how do you handle that? What are ethical frameworks? What do communications chiefs need to do for their own teams to build different ways of approaching storytelling and comms, and understanding how exactly do you organize teams? Where do you use a machine? Where do you use a human being? Where do you need empathy, critical thinking? And where can you build in efficiencies that are good returns on investments? So that's what we're doing. We're looking to develop a new knowledge base that you can trust in the world of AI.
I think that's really critical. And I like the point around just helping people get over that initial fear of this technology. I think if there's anything I like about the newsletters that you send, and you can sign up for those on the Rundown Studio, I believe, it's this sense of experimentation. So I know we're all using ChatGPT and sending me, sort of template emails now. But I think it's important.
And you can tell, right? I mean, you can tell, like,
yeah, no, you can tell.
I was so excited before, and now when I start to see stuff coming at me, I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
They're all kind of the same. They have the same training data. I'm seeing the same things coming at me. So
like
that's
you said, human creativity is still going to be a really essential part of this. I think too many people are discarding that. But I think also beyond beyond using the tools, you've got to be experimenting. You've got to be building your own sort of data sets. You've got to be sort of customizing this stuff in ways that are unique. Otherwise, you're just a customer. And I think too often we're customers on the continent, and we need to be producers a lot more. So I think that's the sense behind the Rundown, and I think that's a sort of a critical thing for audiences to engage with. I'm just before I'm going to ask Professor Bitange a couple of questions, then I'm going to hand it over to Zain, who's actually driving this conversation. But just a bit of housekeeping before I do that. Zain's going to be speaking with the ambassador for about 25, 30 minutes, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. So if you have questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in the Q&A, and when we come to that section, Zain and I will sort of like we'll pick those and we'll answer sort of the best questions in there. And my colleague Victoria is in the chat room, and she'll be moderating the chat room. Please introduce yourself. Let us know where you are listening to this conversation from, what you do, if you've done anything interesting in AI, or if you're doing anything interesting in AI that we should check out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of a great conversation all around. Ambassador, just before we dive into the main topic of conversation, what's been, AI and particularly generative AI really kind of taken the world by storm over the last sort of 18 months, I'd say, has really been sort of like the tipping point in terms of general awareness. What's been your experience with AI, and what's your sort of, what were your first experiences with AI and your first thinking about AI?
Well, if I start from the
briefly
from the beginning, you would think I am one of the oldest people in the world. But it started very, very early on. But let me say something before I say this. I one time saw something, what Albert Einstein had said, that the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. So intelligence, therefore, is not an innate, but rather a dynamic skill only through change. And what you need to know about AI is that just like anything, while I was working with the government in Kenya, we partnered with the Rockefeller Foundation to leverage a new technology. That is just when mobile has just started. We gave some farmers smartphones, which were very few, to take pictures of their crop, and then they would send that picture to a central place where an agronomist will look at, and they will tell them, you have this problem. At the time, the farmers didn't know it was AI. Even many of the analysts, some of the agronomists didn't know it was AI. That was in 2009. Come 2013, I had brought IBM to Kenya, analyzing big data. And they came up with something like, this is going to be credit score. And we're trying to tell people it's going to help us to give loans to people who can't get normal loans from the banks. That was not explained to customers, but that is AI, which is now which has created huge inclusivity. From people in Kenya, for example, those who know M-Pesa are able to borrow. If Tomiwa, Zain, myself went to borrow from Safaricom after some time, they will give Zain more money and give me less, and Tomiwa somewhere. Knowing they would have known that Zain is more trustworthy using AI. Those applications, people didn't quite understand how it works. But what has generated huge debate is generative AI. And the people have begun to be resistant to this new technology, which is going to be smarter than us. Students would write papers. So we are actually focusing on the wrong side of this technology. If I take you back, when we began to talk about digitalization, people were refusing, our data is going to go everywhere. Everybody would know about us. I can see Zain talking about misinformation, how to mitigate misinformation. I usually say that that is all nonsense because we have had, even before this, we had propaganda, which governments used to use, which is practically, then it was misinformation, except that it was carried out in a different way. At least this one we can mitigate by using AI again to tell you that this is not true. It's a hoax. All I'm trying to say, we must begin to move on. Then I came, just 2018, we developed the roadmap for Kenya on the adoption of AI moving forward. Kenya has moved forward, developed a policy on utilization of AI. Africa should not be thinking even one step about whether or not to adopt AI. Why? Because we have the most young people. We have the biggest opportunity to actually take over the world with these young people working in various aspects of AI. The opportunities that have been created are enormous. So when someone comes and says, "Oh, it's going to destroy jobs, whatnot, and everything," robotics started in 1970s, and since then, so much jobs have been created with robots creating things, and the space for robotics has been established, and we are now getting more AI. It's going to create more jobs rather than what people say it's going to finish jobs. Before I finish, our government in Kenya banned computers in offices because it was going to kill the secretarial jobs. Now, when I go to the same government, you find 3, 4 secretaries, this one handling this and this, using computers. So nobody knows how it's going to pan out. But I think it's going to create more jobs than the fears we are hearing from people who are spreading propaganda and not using AI.
No, I think really, really critical perspectives. I really like your perspective on the length of time it takes these technology to develop before they sort of hit sort of popular inflection. So it always seems like everybody's been talking about generative AI for like 18 months, but this is decades of work kind of coming together to public attention in a very, very short span. I also like the optimism about sort of the creation of new jobs. It's interesting. I've interviewed other AI experts who have very, very catastrophic views on it. But I think an important thing with technology is that the outcomes that we end up with are the outcomes that we create. And so engaging with it, building the future that we want to see with it is the only way to sort of end up with outcomes that actually support what it is that we want. I'm going to hand over the conversation to Zain now. So if you want to kick it off, Zain. I see Patience has her hand raised. I assume it's a her. Patience, you will have to have some patience with us. We will get to the Q&A section about 25. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. In about 25 minutes. And I'd say maybe ask your questions in the Q&A and then we'll take it from there. So Zain, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tomiwa. Thank you again, Professor Ndemo. We go back a long way, the ambassador and myself. So thank you so much, for doing this. It's so great to spend time with you between our CNN days, between your government days, the time we used to spend together, and even a family wedding we spent time together, not mine. So thank you. And just to build on what Tomiwa was talking about and yourself, that we just need to take this opportunity and run with it as a continent. What does that look like to you? How does Africa take advantage of generative AI today?
We could begin, because AI is not just AI. AI is data, a lot of data. And we need a lot of this data to improve our lives. What it's being used for now in agriculture, in health, and in all other places We haven't sat down like this and said exactly what can this do to us to remove serious things like poverty. I'll give you an example. I did an article recently in LinkedIn saying we should begin from the end. We find this is Ndemo, is poor and only has 1 acre. Then the question is, what can he do with this 1 acre to be able to succeed? Because we are used to growing cereals, you say he can't grow cereals because even if had the maximum productivity, the cereals would bring this much money, and he needs $2,000 to be able to pay school fees for the children and be able to have sufficient resources for food. Once you know that it is not maize to grow or some other crop, then you say 1 acre is sufficient to grow chicken, because other data shows that we are importing chicken from Brazil, from Belgium, from Netherlands, meaning that we can establish locally. Once that is significant, once you establish that, now how do you monitor? This is where AI comes in, and the data showing you that produce this, and then AI keeps on giving you market intelligence, gives you the husbandry of the chicken and whatnot and everything, and it's monitored from some place. Yeah? And at the end, you make 5,000, you pay the school fees and everything. This is very simple, but it works. I mean, it works if we paid attention that how are we going to finish poverty? We can. And it's only data that can enable you to do that, and the ways of monitoring and the ways of advice that is not present. Meaning, you go online and say, well, the chickens are not giving eggs today. What could be wrong? AI would give you the solution that you need to change the feed, you need to do this, you need to do that. But as I'm saying, it looks simple, but it looks very difficult for people to implement. What I've told you are the solutions now you find in the agricultural sector, improving productivity and also streamlining supply chains, because you understand the entire value chain of any crop, of any product that you have. So we need to get that knowledge to a person who doesn't have significant amount of knowledge to be able to move themselves out of poverty. That's how we can clean poverty out of Africa. We have a chance to do it.
How do we develop our talent pool on the continent to gain that knowledge? And how do we invest in them to take us to the next level?
Very good question. Governments are spending money on all manner of simple things that are not helping them. What you are going to see coming up in Africa are solutions by Bill and Melinda Gates, building hubs where young people come and practice to gather data, to automate some of the outcomes either by voice, and that voice can be in the local language. That's why we are saying we should now be working towards local language LLMs, that's large language models, so that if I am stuck with the questions I have, I will say, well, I am stuck here. What should I use to be able to do this in your vernacular? And then the solution comes, because it can come either through video, it can come through written text or whatever it is. Now, it's unfortunate that Bill and Melinda Gates is the one that is now opening those hubs, instead of governments saying we need to build centers where young people, those who have little knowledge, can be able to learn, to be able to support local farmers, local entrepreneurs to grow their businesses. So you actually need to create centers where innovation takes place and where you scale that innovation or where you provide that kind of innovation and the labs to create solutions in local languages, because now AI is capable of giving us those solutions.
Ambassador, what about the issue? And I'll just, we're all forward thinking and we don't get stuck on these issues, but they are significant issues. The lack of connectivity, the lack of electricity, the lack of infrastructure, and all of the challenges the continent currently faces. So how do we go ahead and develop local large language models when we have serious and significant infrastructure issues? Not saying that needs to hold us back, saying we need to solve for this to be able to play in this field.
Infrastructure, I'll tell you, is an excuse. We have a significant number of people who could be developing those languages. I was in northern Kenya, and I found Americans developing languages that are about to go extinct. Young people from college trying to do that. We have had a group in South Africa, Masakane. They are trying to do 2,000 languages. I saw in Ghana, they are trying to do something. It is sad that we have young people not working and not being utilized to develop their languages, and yet there is connectivity. I think 60%, actually 60 to 70% of Africa has access. Why don't we begin with that? And then the need, if we show results, we can see more investments. Investment by telcos is dependent on customer base. So we actually need to begin from urban areas to peri-urban areas and slowly move to the rural areas. Some countries have 90% coverage. For example, Kenya has almost 95% coverage. Begin with what we have, and then the rest would begin. This is a whole theory that we need to understand. When Korea succeeded with industrialization, China felt so bad. How can a small country succeed and we are here 1 billion? They got annoyed and came out of poverty. You need to create that where you see, oh, I can also succeed like my neighbor has succeeded.
For the audience watching today, Ambassador, that there are so many young entrepreneurs, there's so much interest in this area, and everybody here wants to build, wants to participate in this new narrative, and they want to understand. What would you advise anyone watching right now that would be some of the most important things that someone could do today on the continent, looking to understand, looking to build, and looking to disrupt sectors using AI?
You start, well, like I have talked about LLMs. It looks big, but it isn't big. And I am 100% sure that in any country, you can get actually developers. And nowadays, they don't have to do serious coding because AI has simplified that. So I think it's a Bible that said that you ask, yeah, what can I do to come out of this? What can I do to access AI? How can I be able to solve this problem? And then you begin to get the answers. You can even go online. You can be able to create networks across Africa. And this is where Tomiwa can come in and use his network and create the virtual stuff. If we get these 122 people watching us today to be able to convert and begin to do a small exercise from where they are, we would get 1 million people by the end of the year taking advantage of this knowledge.
What are some of the new skills that we all need to learn in order to take advantage?
You actually don't need much because AI can give you
You see,
You just have to ask.
4-day work week.
Yeah, you have to ask the right questions. How can I be rich? And then it goes and tells you have to have a product and whatnot. And you say, I am in a place where I can't grow maize, all kinds of things. You would get them. But to say that I don't have time to ask a question that would lead me to change my life, that's why I used Albert Einstein's quote that intelligence is something actually you build. And you begin by asking a simple question. How do I deal with poverty? What resources do you have? These are the resources. What is the best way of utilizing those resources? And slowly you can begin to find solutions that you never thought you would do yourself.
Let's talk a little bit about the point about data that you were making earlier. And I'm interested in your perspective, Ambassador, on how do we use Western big tech, AI, large language models, diffusion models, and all of that kind of generative AI, and keep our African data sets, where data is like gold. Everyone's looking for big dumps of data. How do we own our own data?
Very good. If we don't do anything as we are talking now, AI is going to bring Western nuances into our languages if we are not able to develop them ourselves, to incorporate African nuances in something that we are saying, African around culture, around other things. If you told, say, one of the big techies and say, we need resources, and with this, we develop this language. If we have developed the Igbo language and be able to read all the novels that Chinua Achebe did in vernacular, and that they can be able to listen them online in the local languages. Imagine how many millions would listen to that. And out of that, you are good in media, advertisers would be there. From Chinua Achebe's, even when things fall apart, which virtually every student in Africa read, but in vernacular. Now it is all in English. We have never had an Igbo person speak it, and then from Igbo to Yoruba to Kikuyu to Zulu to everything. Imagine that, how much resources from the cultural artifacts that we have. So it's just that we need people like us now to imagine how you create money. You've been in media, you know how to create money. Now, you find Netflix is taking African films and making all that money. We are not there to earn that money. We have AI to help us create better films and stuff and tell our stories. We have the stories, some of them in books. Why can't we do that? We keep on saying, oh, it's capital, capital, capital. And I've said you can start from small and build up.
Why don't we do that?
The procrastination is one of the negatives that we have as Africans. I will do it tomorrow. And then you find an excuse, oh, my mother is calling me in the evening, I cannot do it. We need to get to a point where you say, it's nonsense, I've got to work on it, do it now. I do as much as I can and put it out there. We need many podcasts from people, their experiences. We don't just get to see rich people in Africa, and we don't know how they became rich. They must tell us their stories, and we begin to learn from those stories that if this person made it from this, I could actually be this. And if we did this instead of advertising on CNN, can advertise in vernacular, or you can create an African film, which is it Go, the Nigerian telco company, that they can advertise within the space where they get every African.
In all of this, how do you see the approach that we as Africans, African leaders need to take when it comes to ethical frameworks and when it comes to responsible AI? That's a big conversation happening at all levels globally. How do you see it in the lens of our continent?
You know what we did with M-Pesa. Yeah, we did not get regulation first. We said, let us make mistakes and see those mistakes and correct the mistakes. And we moved forward. Now everybody is talking about M-Pesa. You know, now a good example, yeah? European Union, they begin with rules, with regulations. Who are the competitors globally now? The US and China, because they give room for mistakes to happen and then they correct things. US has not put any act to restrict the AI. China has not. EU has done that. But the EU is now asking introspectively that why are we not doing so good? Why don't we have a Facebook? What you need to know is that regulations precede innovation. Innovation precedes regulations. If you put the regulatory environment, now, if you start talking about the regulation, I will tell you, my sister, that you are the one putting us behind. Let us make mistakes. Like when young people are born, you leave them to touch fire so that they know that the fire isn't a good thing to touch. So let us begin innovation without restrictions. Then we can do the rest. You will not die if I stole your data.
Well, that's a really good point, because that's such a hot button issue here. Everyone is talking about, and drawing a parallel with when there was an advent of social media. It was, everyone was so excited, but it was unregulated. And now look what a mess we're in when it comes to social media. When we look at it. And so the parallel is with Gen AI. We have to start talking about ethics and frameworks and regulatory environment in parallel, but it's moving too fast anyway. To your point, that innovation is moving at such high speed. Like I wake up in the morning, and this is part of the confusion. It's like I don't even know what tool do I have, or there's Llama 3 or Gemini 2 or Gemini Ultra or GPT-4 and GPT-5 and mini AGI and me, I'm going crazy trying to work
just
all of
ask yourself, what am I going to do with this? I write weekly, and then I've been trying that. Can I talk to my computer and write the whole article? And actually, you find 50% of the article has been written by saying, I want to write my discussion with Zain, Verjee, and Tomiwa today about AI. That's almost a paragraph that I've finished without sitting down with my fingers doing that. Now AI does that for me. I can even leave it on at night and see what I dream that I don't remember the following day.
What kind of things should governments be doing to work with private sector, okay, in terms of fostering innovation and AI in their countries and supporting all the talent here in this room and watching around the continent and in the diaspora as well, by the way? What are some of the things in our African context that's diverse that we need to be thinking about?
Government must invest in research. They must give universities money to try leverage Llama, which is open access, and develop LLMs, large language models, for African languages. Number two, the governments must build infrastructure. Must build infrastructure for everybody. Before you go towards building these regulations, do infrastructure, provide resources to research groups, provide resources to build what I said, hubs, instead of foreigners coming to do hubs in Africa, where young people have space to be able to work. That is part of infrastructure, by the way. And governments must give an enabling environment, to create an enabling environment to be able to move, to make young people to be more creative. If you listen to CNN carefully, Africa is going to be the third largest market for gaming after US and China. Third, after US and China. We don't even have a product to put there for advertising, to make money from that. Now, foreigners are going to use it to sell their products. So we also governments need to streamline supply chains of agricultural food, and then help these people to leverage this space to be able to promote, create intra-Africa networks, what we call a single digital market, such that my phone and Tomiwa's phone, I don't need to think how much money I've uploaded, meaning we have like a single network across Africa. That is what you call integration. If governments think they would succeed in the tiny spaces we live in, we will not succeed. So this is what governments ought to be doing at that space. Then, once we see where there are problems, they can come in with regulations. Right now, there is nothing they can come up and say, let us spend time to do regulations on something they don't understand how it's going to pan out.
One more before I hand back over to Tomiwa and then open it up to Q&A. Patience, you've been very patient. So we'll just close this piece of our conversation. But it's not inevitable that Africa will be in this conversation unless we put ourselves at the table and do all of the things that you have articulated. What is the biggest mistake we as a continent can make today?
We have refused to tell our story. We have refused to bring our games into the space of gaming. I'm talking about this because Gen Z are in that space. Yeah, we are playing games which we don't know where they are from. And you know, for example, we have a Jua in Kenya, a game which so many people play. We don't have it in that space. We have several African games that can take over the entire world. We have not. It's because we don't like our culture, thinking that it's primitive to have some of the games in that space. But why don't we try? Why don't the big financial institutions or big companies put money out as rewards for those who come up with innovation? Why can't they invest in startups that we have in Africa? Because we keep on saying, oh, Nigeria got $6 billion, Kenya got $4 billion. That's bloody nonsense. We have Africans with money. We need them to invest in Africa with African solutions that have come up in this space. And that's how you can begin to see growth. Young people come up with ideas. Western companies see them, they grab them because we are not supporting them. We need to change our mindset and begin to grow ourselves. Africa has the advantage of the young people. Give them space to innovate. Innovation requires young people who have no fear, not the people like us who are worried that I need to buy this and that. We are held by other things than the young people are. So I don't know whether I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
But
No
we need,
fear.
yes, no fear.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that really frank conversation, Ambassador. Really appreciate it. I'll hand it back over to Tomiwa. And by the way, Tomiwa, I fully am on board with what Professor Ndemo said about the gaming, you know, because I'm playing Super Mario sometimes here. And sometimes NBA 2K, and I'm sort of PlayStation 5. So you see, I'm really into my into my AI guy bro vibe over here. But seriously though,
We should let them give us Nigeria versus Kenya, where Kenya wins.
We know we'll win, Bwana.
And then make Nigerians more angry.
Those guys.
Optimism. You know.
We know we'll win.
Okay, so there's a few questions already in the Q&A, and if you got questions either for Ambassador Ndemo or for Zain, please put them in the Q&A. I'll jump into some of the more interesting ones. There's something from Kaylin Phillips, who's a product manager, and the question is, in South Africa, we have a common saying local is lekker. Lekker mean pleasant, great, fun, enjoyable, etc. And this should extend to AI models as well, so that African context can be taken into account and prevent bias. I think there's lots of worries about bias in AI. What are your thoughts on how we expedite this? Ambassador, do you want to take that?
I've already said it, that if we don't get into this space, we would end up having Europeans in the black skin, and that would change our culture and everything. We must play a role in this. We must get young people into this space. And that is one of the things that I didn't say, that we need to spend money around capacity building. We must make it compulsory that everybody at least does a course in AI in some way, either to appreciate it or either to do something with it. But we must begin to develop capacity in that. And then we must be very vigilant whether there are biases in it. But you can only deal with biases by doing your own, by creating. We need even our social media platform. By the way, Kenya had come with McMende. I don't know whether you remember that.
Yes, we remember McMende.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Very well.
No, I think, yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Zain.
I'll just say that I had a really fantastic conversation with a Kenyan woman who's doing a lot of very interesting research around a notion that she's called Ubuntu ethics, and the idea there is to make sure that that all the cultural continental nuance, oral culture, storytelling is incorporated across the board, across all Gen AI LLMs, and what are the ways to include some of this kind of a research to ensure that data sets are just not biased. And then how do we train our own LLMs, our own retrieval augmented generation systems, kind of like our own dukas. You know, we could build smaller versions of large language models on top of them that can actually take our data set. So I just wanted to say that there's a lot of great thinking on the continent that's being done. This young woman's name is Wakanyi Hoffman, and she talks a lot about Ubuntu ethics and the way to go about doing that in the context of Gen AI.
The concept in itself presupposes ethics. You are because I am. I mean, meaning that I shouldn't do something to you that someone can do to me. So it's in itself an ethical concept. So we need to sell it widely. I mean, everybody in every part of the world. But what is so strong, and I want everybody to take from here, the storytelling, the African storytelling, around Africa in itself is a multi-billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. There are books besides what the Ajebes and others wrote that have not been written but are in the people's heads that can be told and coded and given and would sell practically everywhere in the world.
I think it's, I mean, no, really, really critical perspectives there. There's a question that's a little bit softer. I think it's important, and it's from Divine Israel, which is, do you think self-awareness and emotional intelligence are soft skills to develop while building a future with AI? Zain, if you want to kick this off, and then the ambassador. But I think it's an interesting question about sort of like this, what else do you need in an AI world? What are the soft skills? What are the things that, you know, we need to complement?
I think this is a really important question, and we categorize it the soft skills, and that's fine. But in my mind, when looking at all the Gen AI opportunities in front of us, all the different models that we're looking at, all the courses we're going to take, and all the expertise we're going to build as a continent, as a community, I think that critical thinking and empathy and human values are going to be equally as important, if not more. Okay. So I think even investing time and energy in understanding how to connect with people, how to communicate with people. There's a lot of work that LinkedIn is actually doing, talking about the importance of empathy, about the importance of even taking more courses in the humanities, because the machines are going to be doing, and we're only at the beginning, right? What we're seeing is just we're right at the tip, right? So this is only going to get exponentially better. And so what exists to us as humanity and to us as Africans is our own ability to connect with other people, the empathy that we have, that I think is much more important than we would imagine. Emotional intelligence and EQ is significant. And so I think that those pieces are really important to think about. And the critical thinking, I think at the rundown.studio, we're really going to emphasize that, because you could get stuff back from your prompts, right? And you can submit it to someone, or Ndemo and I can go to sleep and just put in a prompt and capture this, and we have our nice article, but we're applying our critical thinking to the work that we're producing. LLMs can hallucinate. Their data sets, as we're discussing, are biased. So we can't get lazy. We need to be able to use our brains and still keep something going up here. We'll just start flexing different muscles. But the soft skills, to me, are even more important today than they ever were.
I think
Yeah, go ahead, Ambassador.
Yes, if we can stop one thing, what I call overanalyzing issues, you come up with a new idea, we overanalyze it. But what people don't know, it leads to what psychologists call cognitive emotive loop, which is a vicious cycle of negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. This loop occurs when we have distorted or irrational belief about situations, which leads to emotional distress, which then reinforces the belief and causes us to act in ways that confirm it. So if it is very dangerous when your mind gets into such a space, and that is where we are. I don't overanalyze something. If you ask me to go for lunch, I can say very quickly yes or no. But if I said yes, last time when we went to lunch with, then you are now getting into, you are creating emotions that are not part of the process that you're supposed to make a decision. I am sure everybody knows overanalyzing is a very negative aspect in our lives.
Um, fully agreed, Ambassador.
Bitange, would you like to go out for lunch?
Yeah.
I don't know. Last time.
I'm not sure,
Yeah, but
Zain,
wow.
that last time in Nairobi, I wasn't sure. No, happy to go to lunch with you both whenever we're in the same city and soon. There's a question here from Oswald Asaratin Guabadia about how do we look at this from a Pan-African perspective? What are the steps to drive this as an all of Africa program? And I think, like, if I read a little bit more into that question is, what do we do as a continent? Because there's each country doing whatever bit it is that they do, but collectively, what are the bits that we need to work on together?
By the way, I do research, which I don't write, from the corners of West Africa to South Africa. Yeah, the story of Africa is the same, and they behave the same. Um, I, I wish I was in front of you to show when a woman is hungry in Africa, that they behave the same across the continent. There is some commonalities in spite of the fact that we have different languages. They hold their, you know, I don't know whether you understand this, Tomiwa. Put their hands akimbo and look at you, meaning that they have something serious to tell you.
Yes.
So, so
I've been a recipient.
yes, culture, culture is uniform across Africa. We refer to books written by other people from far away, from South Africa, from Nigeria, even from the Caribbean. We relate to that. So the different languages should not make us begin to think differently, that we cannot be able to have commonalities. People say, oh, there is an African saying. They can't tell you which tribe it came from because they can relate to that saying or story.
Fantastic. Anything to add on that, Zain?
I think it's there are multiple levels, as a continent, as countries, as individuals. We all have a responsibility to be a part of this conversation and take a lead, with one, in 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will be an African, and we have our youth opportunity. I would love to see that the innovations and the inventions and we're the creators of platforms that the rest of the world will use. And, that kind of talent and opportunity is in front of us right now. I think from the country and continental standpoint, I think the AI foundations, need to be laid from a macro standpoint. Compute capabilities, access to data, access to AI models, the ability for app development, the use of LLMs and kind of expertise and the partnerships that are required. So all of these things the ambassador has articulated that I think, really are the priorities. But I think the onus is also on every single one of us to learn one thing one day about artificial intelligence, and don't let it intimidate you, is sort of the best personal advice I could give.
I love that. And I think it's
There is
really
a good question which you are not asking.
okay.
How to convert an African game into something popular on the internet.
Please.
I think so many of you here can respond to this. At some point, I may be running out of time, but I thought that is very interesting.
Are there any
There are so
gamers
many
here?
games.
Are there any gamers in our group here that can?
If you are, please indicate in the chat if you're a gamer with a yes or just type gamer. Gamer is here.
Maybe tell us
It's
what we
very
need
easy very easy for let them say which game it is, and it will be coded. And through Zain, of course.
Because I'm sitting here coding as well.
Yeah.
Through
Yeah.
Anja. Gamers, all right. I think, you know,
I mean, there's a few interesting.
that is a.
Sorry, go ahead, please, Zain.
No,
Yeah.
please, you go ahead.
I was going to move on to another question, but go. So I think, yeah, if you want to just speak to that, yeah.
I was excited that there are gamers and fans here, and I was just underscoring that this is a massive opportunity for the continent, and you know it's on the people in this room to do it, or to tell us what we need to do to help you do it, or to get us to do it. But either way, we have to do it.
Absolutely. I think there's a thing where we're really comfortable being consumers on the continent, and you know, like we play games. We consume, you know, we use the apps that the West makes. We use, you know, the solutions that the West builds. And we've really got to be a lot more proactive about just building and using our own. There's so much, yeah, there's so much opportunity in that case. Ambassador, I know you're running a bit tight on time. There's a couple of
Yes.
questions here that I might like you to just respond on. There's one from Joshua Onu on sort of how can telco companies, you know, your MTNs, your Safaricoms, be leveraged given the vast amount of data that they have to develop AI in Africa? Is that stuff that the telcos themselves should be doing? You know, should we be having partnerships with them to leverage that data? Like, do you have thoughts on that front?
I'll be worried if it was in the early 2000s. Right now, you don't need them. You know, with so many apps, you just need Google App Store, and put there. They will come down kneeling in a few years because their revenues from voice are dropping drastically, and they don't see that they need to innovate or work with people to make more money. So if they don't, we have so many ways of bypassing them, and they are beginning to know, and that's how they are working with some people. If say Airtel in Nigeria refuses, forget about them. Go to Ghana or come to Kenya, and soon they would learn. Oh, can we have this on this? So this business of kneeling down to get someone to accept, bypass them. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's got to be the energy, and that's got to be spirit, is work with the people who are ready to work and like leave the other people in the past, you know.
If you can't get it done in Nigeria, come to Kenya.
Yeah.
I mean, and vice versa. I think this is one for you, Zain, which is from Jadesola Adedeji, which is AI is sort of looking to recognize, has been touted to revolutionize education in Africa, particularly personalized learning. How do we achieve that, given sort of like the digital infrastructure deficit we have to contend with? Any thoughts on that front?
Yeah, great question. Do you mind if I just check in with Ambassador Ndemo? Are you okay to stay for a few minutes, or do you have to bounce?
Let me answer that and go. I am somewhere
Then you
where
go
they
first. Yeah, I know you had to go.
Yeah, so please, Ambassador. Thank you.
Yes, this infrastructure, I think we should not be worried about it. AI is going to revolutionize education, and some of the solutions that we have seen are mind-boggling. That AI can look into your face and they know that you are not understanding. You know, I've been a teacher for many years, 30 years, and 5% of the students usually can actually teach on your behalf. There is some 20% you have to teach. Then you see their faces opening up and saying, "Ha." There is another group which don't get it. It's not that they are not clever. It's that the mode of delivery or what we call the pedagogical method that you are using is not the one they can understand. That they can understand it in other ways. This is the one we are concerned about, and that we need solutions in AI which can detect when you are actually absorbing the content. and you do it. There is nobody who is foolish. It's us who put those labels that this one will never succeed. You get your PhD, you go home to borrow money from them because they have succeeded in entrepreneurship. Yeah. And they're the ones you left behind as foolish.
Ambassador, you know, there's this app, I think it's called humane.ai, and I'll share it with the team. But actually, when I look at it, it is reading my face already. And I'm smiling, it says happy, you're happy. And it's reading every emotion that I have.
Every emotion.
And then asking me why I'm feeling like this. Oh, is it Hume? Is it Hume? Yeah, okay, maybe it's Hume, not humane. Thank you. But it's pretty amazing. And you know, there was Pi.ai, which is like a personal, like more empathic AI. And then this one was sort of a scale up where the empathic element was built into the training model, but it captures the visuals. So when you're interviewing someone, you can tell this one is.
If my mom used to read my face with the naked eyes, guess what? She used to tell me, "You are lying," and actually I was lying to avoid. So the AI would actually guide you on your children. Yeah.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. Tomiwa, I know you would like to thank also the professor.
Any one of you, when you're in Brussels, just call. I will go to lunch without procrastinating.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador. We will definitely all take you up on that invitation when we're in Brussels. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Asante, Prof.
Amy, leave.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'll just add to that education point was that the AI, it really gives us a chance to level up, right? So if somebody didn't have like a formal education or some fancy Ivy League degree or some PhD, or, you know, like you don't have that kind of formal training, you still have the prospect of mobility, because artificial intelligence and all of these platforms that we're talking about, in particular, the large language models out there, they give us the ability to bridge the knowledge gap. So if I know how to do a nice PowerPoint and I do these pretty clever words and I'm writing a nice speech for someone, right? Like if you have not been trained in any of this, you could do as well as I can, right? And I think that is really exciting.
Yeah, I think fully agreed. I think we can take a couple more questions. I know that there are probably more than we can take within this session. But let's see if we can take a couple more of them. In the interim, we're also going to launch a poll just to get some perspectives from the audience. So that's going to come up in a moment. And please take that and give us, you know, sort of your thoughts. I've got here, I'm trying to see which of these kind of is kind of a strong one for us to answer. Some really interesting questions here. So, I mean, here's one from Amanda Majumere, which is coming back to the games, which are definitely a big theme of today's conversation, around the idea of exporting African indigenous games with the help of AI. But around the fact that a lot of our AI exports face the same issues. They're stripped of cultural context. They're condescended to, just as some of our traditional exports. So how do we maintain cultural nuance as we use AI to globalize the games that we value here in Africa? And I think we could probably broaden that question to any media that we're kind of putting out on a global basis, you know, AI video, AI games, etc. Any thoughts around that, Zain?
Yeah, that sort of embedded discrimination or racism or condescension, it exists, you know, in multiple ways and can manifest in all aspects. I have found that it's also in the excuse, while real, I don't want to make it the excuse category that, oh, well, you know, this is why, right? There are a lot of really great people and platforms and places that were you to connect to the right ones or have an advocate to help you get out there. There are a lot of very successful Africans in the diaspora running some major places that, you know, that have a vested interest or relationship or the ability to understand what you're trying to do. Not sugarcoating it, saying, you know, you just need to work harder, because it's really hard. And I acknowledge the challenges with all of that stuff. But you do have allies. If you're in Brussels, you can call Bitange. If you're in LA, you can call me. You know, we're building a network around us with talent and creatives and gamers within artificial intelligence and all other platforms, so we can build with each other, but also for each other. And so I think you have to keep, you know, you have to keep chasing. That does exist, but there are partners and relationships that can back you if your idea is good.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely on point. Again, just around sort of building and around edtech, and I know these are education is definitely an area for you. So Divine's asking around sort of what are your recommendations for one interested in building an edtech solution with AI? I wonder if that's actually, I wonder if that's
Yeah,
much
I'm doing
different.
that. So I'm doing the solution. What
All right, tell us.
what are your the recommendations are, you know, don't use AI and technology just because it's there, right? Have it provide an end use function for a user. There are lots of fancy fads, and, you know, I love fads. All my whole team will tell you this one just, you know, she loves like new shiny things. And there are a lot of new shiny things out there, you know. I think personalized learning is a big one. I think, you know, like if you look at like our classrooms and schools, the ratio from students to teachers, you know, what that looks like artificial intelligence and personalized learning, and different methods and tools can change that. You could get better quality learning, more attentive to a student that needs more help, to a student that is really excellent. I think that's an important aspect to think about with artificial intelligence and ed tech platforms. There's so many ed tech platforms out there. You know, one of the challenges is that we all have, except for this session, Zoom exhaustion. You know, like we're online a lot, right? And so I think to myself, well, why would someone come here? And they're, you know, because post-pandemic, you know, everyone has some level of fatigue. And the way the Rundown.studio team and I think about it is, you know, if you're providing quality, if you're solving for a specific problem, and if you're making it a little bit of fun as well, right? If it's a nice gamified gamers experience,
Yeah.
that could also be cool. I hope that answers the question, but it maybe answers only a small part of it, Divine, but there's a lot of stuff out there. Look at Khan Academy and what they're trying to do with Khan Migos, you know. That might be a good place to look, because they're trying to build personalized learning and building their educational tools that way, but they run into some challenges using the different tech models as well. So I feel like we should be learning from everyone who's trying to disrupt the space, because we're all in the same boat and we're all at the same level, learning something new at the same starting point.
Yeah. I think it's a critical point, you know, like this is all relatively new. It's new area on a global basis. It's new areas for Africa. I think as much research and fundamental research has gone into AI, there's still a lot of thinking to be done about how it gets applied creatively to our problems globally.
Right.
And I think that's the opportunity that we have, is to be innovative in the application of AI to solve both African and global challenges. And that requires this thing that you said, kind of a spirit of experimentation, a willing to get your hands dirty, you know, just do it. There are a lot of how questions within the Q&A, and I know we're not going to get to all of them. I do think that Zain's spoken to sort of the how, which is, whether it is just building your first LLM, whether it's solving a regulatory problem, it is whether it's, figuring out how countries sort of coordinate better across the continent. It is a getting started and getting your hands dirty challenge,
Right, right.
Yeah, I think building anything requires solving a wide range of problems along the way, some of which, when you start, you're not going to believe yourself capable of handling. But when you get there, you face that problem and you solve that problem. And I think that, sort of what builds great companies, what builds great economies, what builds a great continent is more and more people willing to tackle the problems as they face them on the road. But you got to get started. So I'm giving that as kind of a blanket answer to a range of how questions that we are not going to be able to get to on this particular call. Does that seem fair, Zain? I mean,
yeah, it does actually, and I see them and we see you. What I might suggest, Tomiwa, is if we don't get to the how, we won't get to all these hows. And
I got 9 more minutes.
what we can do, solution,
Yeah.
is we can compile those questions and we'll get our experts, to answer. So at least somewhere on TechCabal or Rundown, or we can answer these questions so everyone feels like they got a specific response to what they were thinking about. But to your point, if I may say, I know we're almost at the end of this. If you don't put yourself in a situation where you are uncomfortable, then you will not grow. Okay. The only way that I'm sitting here, talking to you about AI, Tomiwa's first question is, wait, what is she? Why, wait, she was teaching.
Yeah.
What is like?
Why is our anchor telling us about?
I've got my Nintendo Switch, right? But the only reason is because I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to embarrass myself. I'm willing to not know the answer. I have been very uncomfortable the last many years because I'm constantly trying to teach myself. No, we are all learning together. Just go online or, sign up for a free course or, something like that. Like just commit that you just want to learn, because people that know how to use AI will keep their jobs, and people that don't are at risk. Right. And I think that this is an important piece. And I'll just say that one of the most uncomfortable things I've done is to build a retrieval augmented generation platform called Wanja. Now, the Kenyans here, don't ask me why Wanja. Okay. And don't object to that name. But our team decided we would call this effort that we were undertaking Wanja. And Wanja is a RAG, a retrieval augmented generation retrieval system. Okay. And essentially, we were not building our own LLM. It's too expensive. It's frozen in time. Data sets are biased, etc. Right. But what we did, and my co-founder in the Rundown, Thomas, and the team, Zaki and Jill, we've been working on this idea. And the idea is, wait, why don't we take what data sets that we own? I've done all these interviews. We've got access to information that's not on Google, right? Let us take our own data, however limited it is, like say 100 transcripts, right? And we start understanding how do you chunk this data, right? How is this data understood by a machine? How is it retrieved? And how is it processed in natural language? And how does it come back? So it's like a private little shop, my little duka, right? With our data on how to do business in Africa, or the creative cultural industries, or climate in Africa, or health in Africa. Those are the data sets we were testing, because now that the answers are our answers, okay? So you can apply this in so many ways. We're going to apply it on our learning platform on the rundown.studio. If you don't want to write another press release ever for the comms people here, you could train a RAG to understand all the stuff in your company, okay? And you can you can fine tune it, meaning it answers more specifically to exactly what you have. And I'm using these words, but it's not that hard. If I can do it, ... you can do that, and you then are able to use your own data sets to generate your own responses, and for anyone else then to use that and get what you put in, right? So I would say doing things like that, trying and failing and being uncomfortable, is a good way to go about it. The alternative is fear and paralysis.
I like that. Being uncomfortable is essential. The alternative is fear and paralysis. I mean, that really is it. I asked Patience to be patient with us, and I want to give her a chance to speak. I haven't seen her question in the Q&A. Patience, do you have a question for us? You still have your hand up. Just before we round this off, I've allowed you to speak, so you should be able to unmute and speak if you have a question. Okay.
I see someone posted the rundown.studio Wanja. Just please, there's a little feedback button there. So if you do test it, just know the data sets are ours and limited. Sometimes she can get a little crazy and give you some crazy answers, which we're figuring out. But we'd love you to ask Wanja and give us feedback. Thanks.
Please do. Fantastic. I want to say thank you immensely, Zain, for joining us today for today's session, and to Ambassador Ndemo, who was with us, for his time, for his graciousness, for the knowledge he shared with us. It's been a really, really sort of valuable session, I believe. Thank you to the audience for joining us today for this session of TechCabal Live in partnership with The Rundown. All the links are in the chat. If you are interested in following The Rundown, go check it out, give some feedback so that they can improve that product. You can find more about TechCabal Insights at insights.techcabal.com. And if you're interested in understanding sort of just Africa's digital economy, if you're looking for data, research, or intelligence, we'd be happy to work with you to get answers to all of your digital economy questions in Africa. Once again, thank you so much for your time. Join us next time. We will share more information on future sessions of TechCabal Live. And we wish you all have a wonderful day. For those whose questions didn't get answered, we are sort of collating them, and we'll see if we can get some feedback and some answers from Zain and from Ambassador Ndemo so that we can share after the fact. But thank you all so much for your time today. Zain, have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us.
For me, it's
get
4
some
o'clock
sleep.
in the morning.
Get some sleep.
Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so really appreciate your time and interest. Thank you.
Excellent. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.